Hey, Cross Park, this is your Thanksgiving week leadership update. Hope you're having a great week whenever you get a chance to see this. A few announcements and a few comments about our passage in John. First, this is our last Sunday on the fall schedule. So September, October, November, fall schedule. December, January, February, winter schedule. We've had a lot of discussion, thought, and working about how to sort of handle the winter. We don't have a lot of other options. I mean, we've decided as a leadership team that we are staying at Hemby for the time being. We don't have any plans to go anywhere else. So how can we make the most of it? We have a team, our staff team, plus the women's care team, plus elders and deacons met last week to think through this. So we're trying to create as much consistency as possible with the realization that, hey, we could change our mind at some point if we need to do this slightly differently. But here's what we're planning for the winter. In the fall and the spring, we have Sunday school 9:30, church at 10:30. In the summer, we move the service to 9:30 because it's service only, and we're trying to avoid the heat. In the winter, then, the service is going to be service only, no Sunday school, and that's at 10:30. Moving another half hour or something doesn't really buy us that much, maybe a degree or two at most. And so we're going to meet at 10:30 for the winter. And we're planning to have our default option be outside. We all know that there are temperatures and conditions in which it's simply not worth meeting outside, even though it's covered. It's just too cold, or the wind chill is terrible. So we will occasionally, if needed, we will head inside to Magnolia and cram in there. We're going to have a group of folks thinking about that, looking at the weather each week. And we will let you know, sometime Saturday afternoon is our current plan, to let you know inside or outside tomorrow, so you can adjust and plan accordingly. We want to try to minimize chaos and minimize confusion. So service at 10:30, because we always think about 10:30 as a Cross Park time. Primarily outside. We're not going to make lots of changes to that. We are going to have the plastic walls down and heaters and so forth. We do encourage you to check out. There's all sorts of ways to stay warm. I mean, you know this, but also sometimes you don't know until you look. So I think we're even going to pass on some recommendations. There's lots of ways people stay warm when they sit outside at sporting events and when they go hiking, and there's lots of ways to stay warm. So we want you to stay warm. We're not interested in you being miserable and not being able to pay attention. But one additional thing we're adding to our winter reality, our winter dynamics, is we are planning to have a warm room. So starting in December, we're planning to pipe in the audio to one of the rooms, which means you can come to church, you can worship and sing and see everybody. And then because it's a cooler day or because you are particularly cold, we also have a wide variety of people and how they experience the temperature. If you just think, I cannot be outside very long, then you can go in the warm room, and the service audio will be piped into that warm room. So we don't know how many of you will take advantage of that. Maybe a lot, maybe a few. Either way, we're going to try this idea, have a warm room where we can pipe in the audio and you can go in there as needed. Additionally, we'll plan to have, as we've done in the past, slightly shorter sermons in the winter. So on a cold day, make you less unpleasant. I know just sitting still in the sermon, it does kind of add up quickly. The temperature dynamic can get unpleasant. So we're going to try to keep those things shorter. So 10:30 for the winter, no Sunday school, meeting primarily outside. We'll let you know if weather dictates that we need to go inside by Saturday afternoon, and we'll have a warm room. So that's our current plan for the winter. One fun winter thing, a tradition at Cross Park Church, is cookies and carols. So go ahead and lock in on your calendar, December 17th. That's Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6. We'll have cookies and carols at Hemby, and look for the Sign Up Genius so you can know what to bring. Well, I wanted to briefly talk about last week's sermon. You know, it's interesting, as I preach, I don't always know which ideas will connect well. I have some guesses. I've done this for a little while now, and, I have an idea sometimes of what ideas sound good to people, but you never know how it's going to hit anyone and how even the Spirit might use what you say to really do something significant in someone's life. But then on top of that, even though I'm the preacher, I'm also under the Word. I'm trying to learn and grow through the passages that I'm preaching as well. I want Jesus to be real and be at work in my life too. So sometimes I'm even surprised, even as I'm preaching and as I reflect on my own sermon, about an idea that maybe connects better than I thought it would. So for me, and I've heard a few others mention this, I really like this idea of metabolizing grace, right? That the grace of God is poured out on us, is given to us. It's a gift. It's wonderful. And yet oftentimes we don't know what to do with it. We don't properly metabolize it, right? We don't take it in such a way that it fuels us, it changes us, it nourishes us. And so I would just want you to think a little bit more about that idea for yourself. We do struggle to understand the gospel, right? To metabolize grace, to really get what it means. Sometimes, of course, it keeps us from understanding the details of the gospel itself, right? So in Sunday school recently, Grant's been talking about this chart, right, where like this, our understanding of God's holiness increases over time, and our understanding of our own sinfulness increases over time. So at the beginning of the Christian life, the cross, right, in one sense, it covers our need, but our perception of our need grows over time, and thus our understanding and experience and appreciation of the cross grows over time. This is how it works. Well, if we can't metabolize grace, we're going to miss all those things. We're not really going to see how great God is and holy he is. We're not really going to see our own need properly. I mean, we might wallow in thinking I'm so bad, but we don't really understand it. And then most fundamentally, we won't understand how Jesus, not just the fact that he covers the distance between God's holiness and my sin, but how he does it, what grace tastes like and feels like. So we need to metabolize it properly, right? We need to let it go deep within us. And if we understand the grace of God, if we're both serious about our sin, but also not shocked and surprised that it's still there, we'll deal with God and others and even ourselves differently. We certainly won't be well motivated for healthy ministry if we don't understand the grace of God, right? We might be motivated by guilt. We might be motivated by performance. We might be motivated by any number of, I'm going to make God like me and give me special things because I'm loving other people. I mean, again, we rarely think those thoughts that clearly to ourselves, but oftentimes that's what's going on within us. So to properly, I mean, what I said in the sermon was to be properly motivated towards others, to be others and outward focus. We need to metabolize grace because the grace of God is both to us and through us. It delights us, but it also changes us. And it's so good. We taste that Jesus really is better, and it's so much better that our natural instinct is to show off and proclaim how great and glorious and gracious he is, right? And again, we do this with lots of other things in our lives. So it makes sense. We're made for beauty and goodness, and we're made to want to share that beauty and goodness with others. But we have to metabolize grace to properly do that and properly be motivated. Also, maybe even this is helpful as we head into the holidays, thinking about how to deal with other people, thinking about how to deal with, your frustrating in-laws or your crazy Uncle Jimmy, right? Like, we actually have an Uncle Jimmy. I hope you didn't hear that. He's not crazy. You're going to have to deal with difficult people sometimes, or difficult family dynamics. Oftentimes, family dynamics bring out in you stuff that you don't like and that you wish wasn't there. Can you deal with that by grace? Can you not be surprised and shocked that it's still there, either within your family or within you, and figure out how to let Jesus speak to you in the midst of those dynamics? It's really hard, and that's something I'll be praying for all of us, but also yourself, right? So oftentimes, and I see this in myself, especially in ministry, we can often really rightly apply grace to other people in their situation, because honestly, I think we can see it more clearly. When we look at ourselves, we're a bit self-deceived. We have our own experience of guilt and shame and sin that colors our perception of ourselves, and so we oftentimes aren't sure how to actually apply grace to ourselves. And again, we can miss it on all different ways, right? We can be overly hard or harsh on ourselves. We can not take our own sin very seriously. We can totally miss whatever dynamics are happening in our own hearts. And so as we metabolize grace, it will change even how we think about ourselves. So those are just some thoughts from last week's sermon as we think about this idea of properly metabolizing grace. Okay, a few quick questions to help you prep for this week. We're in verses 43 through 54 of John 4. And we have Jesus going back to his hometown. It says he's going back home because he knows that there's no honor for prophets in their hometown, and he gets there and they seem to honor him. What is going on there? So that's verses 43 through 45. You're going to want to look at that and think about those dynamics. Just about lost my notes. Secondly, look at verse 48. The official says, I want you to come heal my son. And Jesus' first answer is, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. Is that a critique? Is it a critique of the official? Is it a critique of everyone? Is it a prediction? Unless you see signs and wonders, I know you're not going to believe. Or is it just sort of a statement? This is the way it goes around here, or this is the way it goes with people. Unless they see signs and wonders, they don't believe. Is there any sort of commendation in that? It's an important question to consider as we look at this passage. Jesus makes that comment. It's a very important comment. What does it mean? Another question, what's going on with this official? Is he just looking for signs and wonders? Does he have real faith? Is it both? How can you tell? It's a good question to wrestle with about him. What does this passage tell you about Jesus and how he works? I mean, that's always a good question when you're reading the Gospels or the Bible anywhere, frankly. But I think in this passage, maybe he isn't the easiest to understand. It's not. He seems to be doing things that put us in tension, as he often does. We don't understand him, but he's also here to reveal truth about God. So we're struggling to figure out sometimes what's happening in the passage. So what do we make of him here? I think it's a bit enigmatic how Jesus is working in this passage. Also, there's all these connections with the early part of John, but particularly chapter 2. So here at the end of 4, it talks about Cana. It talks about the miracle of turning water into wine. You have servants involved. It notes that this is the second sign Jesus did in Galilee. There are 7 signs in the first half of John, but these are the 2 that are enumerated, that they are numbered. There's also this question of how people respond to signs. Why is John pointing out that this incident is particularly connected to chapter 2? And as you think about that, right, well, why? Like, what's going to be productive in our understanding about that? And finally, where can you see your own heart in this story? What dynamics here reveal you? How do you relate to what's going on in the passage? What questions does this bring up for you? Good, bad, or indifferent, right? Like what does it prompt in you? And ultimately, why and how should we respond to what Jesus is doing and saying here? All right, that's all I have for today. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving week. Again, whenever you're watching this, I hope it has been and will be a great long weekend for many of you. We are having our final Sunday of the fall schedule. So 9:30 Sunday school, 10:30 service. We'll see you Sunday morning all together at Henby. Thanks, Cross Park.